Picture this. With some cards you pulled from a Commander Legends box and some bulk, you build a really fun deck. You get some upgrades, but soon find out that it's mostly fun just for you, and it's getting old anyway. So, you take those upgrades and turn the deck into a different value pile. Fun for a bit, but soon gets boring. You convince yourself to go back to the original build, but the same problems arise. You turn to the new brew again and nothing is terribly boring. But you know what? Years have passed, Commander has changed, you have changed. Let's give it a final shot. Has this hyper-specific chain of events ever happened to you? Well, it did to me. Hi, I'm Cappy, and I have been a Simic value player since 2019. The deck I want to talk about today is that kind of deck that I pull out once in a while, which I only really upgrade when it feels stale, without a final deck building goal. If you want to put the philosophy of this deck in just a couple words, it is have fun, which stands for fun, unique, and experience. Now, I know what you want to say. Is this a recursive acronym? No, actually, this second fun is another acronym which stands for Fantastical Grotanana. Hold up. Who the hell wrote this stuff? If you are here expecting the perfect cure for a Cascade and Discover combo build, sorry, you are not getting that this time. Anyhow, Imoti Celebrant of Bounty is a 3/1 snake druid with Cascade which grants Cascade to all the spells with mana value 6 or greater that you cast. In case you are unfamiliar with this mechanic, Cascade is an ability that triggers when a spell with Cascade is cast. Cascade has you exile card from the top of your library till you reveal a non-land card with mana value less than the spell with Cascade. You may then cast the revealed card without paying its mana cost. All the cards that haven't been cast, including the found non-land card if you decide not to cast it, are then put on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's a sort of a slot machine. You will most probably get value from Cascade, but what will you get? Who knows? And that's what makes it fun for me, when I don't feel like thinking too much in a Commander game. When you grant such unique ability to cards that usually wouldn't have it, funny things can happen and strong synergies can emerge. Now, I know this strategy can attract some hatred due to your opponents being unable to do their thing and being forced to watch if you start doing your thing. No, wait, this was for stacks. Okay, I know this strategy can attract some hatred due to your opponents being unable to do their thing and being forced to watch if you start doing your thing. Hold up, I think my scripts got mixed up. This was for meal. I know this strategy can attract some hatred due to your opponents being unable to do their thing and being forced to watch. No, this is Spellslinger. Alright, give me a moment. Where did I put that? No. Is this one? Ah, yeah, found it. There we go. Right, where was I? Oh, right. I know this strategy can attract some hatred due to your opponents being unable to do their thing and being forced to watch if you start doing your thing, but do not worry, that's not my kind of game. I like my games to purposely end at some point. Yes, this is a very Simic deck. Ramp hard, draw cards, get extra value from each of your big spells thanks to Cascade, but the twist is, the final goal is turning the act of getting value itself into a win con. But I'll stop rambling now and go in order. Let's address the tree-triggering elephant in the room. Cascade is essentially random. How do I make the deck vaguely consistent then? Although this is admittedly for the greatest part a vibes-based deck, I can assure card choices are all but random. There are two principles in the base of this brew. Number 1, Imoti must stay on the battlefield as much as possible. This deck can fend off for itself without the commander, yet Cascade is pivotal to propel you towards the victory. Number 2, any Cascade will end with a mana value 5 or less spell. How can I say that with such certainty? Well, notice how Imoti lacks any limitation beyond the mana value of the spells. No spells you cast from your hand, no the first spell you cast during your turn. The effect is applied to all mana value 6 or higher spells you cast, however and whenever you cast them. Say you cast a mana value 8 spell, now you either cascade on a spell with mana value less than 6, which isn't granted Cascade by Imoti, or a spell with mana value 6 or 7, which will trigger Cascade again. Repeat this process each time. This chaining of cascades ensures whatever the initial cost, the last spell of the chain will belong to this part of the curve. You can use this to your own advantage. By choosing the right cards during deck building, you can ensure you will always get your desired effect at the end of each cascade. In my case, save a couple of cards which are too good to pass and which I will talk about later. All other below mana value 6 spells are either card advantage, ramp or protection for Imoti. Thanks to the fact that Imoti herself has Cascade, you don't really need to worry too much about her being removed. Cast Imoti, Cascade, get some protection. Or cast Imoti, Cascade, and ramp just enough to be able to recast her with the commander attacks next turn, or get a great card advantage engine to hopefully divert attention from her and build up some more value. This deck is inevitable. Imoti won't stay out of the battlefield for long when removed, and in one turn or another, your opponents will either have something else to focus on or run out of removal. Moreover, the ramp package of the deck is built with purpose. I run all affordable 1 mana ramp spells, so that I can ramp on turn 1, play a 3 mana ramp spell on turn 2, and Imoti on turn 3, eventually ramping again with Cascade. If you have some cash to spare, feel free to include expensive ones. This allowed me to include a few cards that are not very popular, but work pretty well here. Recross the paths can eventually get an untapped land, return to end for more ramp, and give a little top deck manipulation in the process. Bring Mine will act as an always available 6 mana Cascade spell from your graveyard. I recently added Gwenna to the deck, which can produce lots of mana if you can chain multiple creatures with power 5 or greater with Cascade. Remember that you can always tap Gwenna in between multiple triggers, so you can store the mana in your mana pool for maximum efficiency. Last one I'd like to mention here is Clement, who can occasionally bounce a creature to your end to recast it and repeat a cast trigger or an enter's effect. Alright, let's move on. You have ramped, cast Imoti and managed to keep her alive till your next untap. What now? Time to get huge amounts of value with big spells and Cascade. After Imoti hits the field, it's time to show your supremacy in the resources department. Once you reach this point, the strategy becomes really open-ended. This is the place where to play your favorite big spells and have even more value attached to them. Do you want big creatures, big instants and sorceries, landfall synergies? Choose your favorite flavor. Personally, as mentioned before, I focused my build on accruing even more value to turn into a victory. Therefore, most big spells fall into 3 categories: cards that further the value plan either by amplifying or protecting it, interaction to mess up with my opponent's game plan, and finishers. Let's deal with them in order. Furthering the value plan basically means doing more of what the deck is already doing: more card advantage, more mana, more big spells and creatures. Here you can find mana doublers like Zendikar Resurgent and Mana Reflection, high mana value card advantage spells that can be cast for less, like Treasure Cruise or Dig to Trime or even Null Drifter with its evocability. This is a reminder of the fact that Cascade only cares about the mana value of the spell and the fact that you cast it, not how much mana you spent on it. Cards that grant you free spells are especially powerful here. One with the Multiverse grants a free spell on each of your turns, while offering a bit of top deck manipulation by letting you remove unwanted spells and lands from the top of your library. Wondrous Crucible has 2 functions: some soft protection for your permanents and recasting something for free from your graveyard. It's important here that the Crucible is not making token copies of permanent cards in your graveyard, but it actually copies the cards, including non-permanent cards, and lets you cast them. Since the copy carries over all the properties of the original, it keeps the mana value too, which Imoti surely appreciates. I really love unexpected results to cascade onto. It will make you shuffle your deck and reveal the top card. If it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield and return unexpected results to your hand. If it's a spell, you can cast it for free. Imagine you just cast unexpected results at the end of a cascade chain. You either get ramp or another shot at it, or you eventually restart the chain for free. Love it! The most explosive spell in this category though are Apex Devastator, Aminatus Augury and Mind's Desire. Not much to say about the first one. It's important to remember that multiple instances of Cascade trigger separately, so 10 mana for a 10-10 body and 4+1 Cascade chains with Imoti is a wonderful deal. Aminatus Augury triggers Cascade, then on average it will ramp and give you a couple big spells for free, for more Cascades. With all the extra spells you cast while cascading, your storm count will hopefully often be quite higher than usual, and Mind Desire will let you take advantage of that. Make a mental note about the storm count because we will be coming back to that. Here, I'll put it in that corner for you. Besides, aren't you tired of hearing me say cascade? Because we're doubling up. Non-legendary copy effects are incredible here, since if you copy Imoti, they will apply air effect one additional time. This will multiply your chains to absurd results. Imagine you cast an 8 mana spell with 2 copies of Imoti on the battlefield. You get 2 8 mana cascades, and the first ends on a 7 mana spell, which will then give you 2 7 mana cascades and so on. And you still have to resolve the second initial one. I personally run Autumn Soldier as I already own the copy. Just remember to avoid those which cost less than 5 mana. You may cascade onto them when you first cast Imoti, and they will resolve before Imoti does, possibly making them useless. In the past, I also tried them off the host since it's an equipment, but I finally removed it because it was a tad too clunky. Now, the moment you were all waiting for. I recently added Glacial Worm to the deck. Why? Okay, it has a weird effect, but it's just a big trampling creature. Well, sometimes that's just what you need. Since the deck has a good amount of ramp spells that fetch lands from the deck, there are many chances to cast a worm from the deck. You got mana flooded, cast yet another ramp spell, cast a worm and trigger cascade while also drawing a card, or 3, or more. I'm sorry, no interactions at the edge of magic rules this time. I'm testing this addition, I'll let you know how it goes. Alright, I've talked about value for a while now, how about the interaction spells I promised? You won't find strong and efficient staples here, the deck building restrictions of this brew don't really allow those. We need almost only ramp, protection and card advantage below mana value 6, so no interaction can be really in that part of the curve. There is one sole exception to this, Ugin's Binding. This is too good to pass up. I currently run 5 7 mana colorless spell that can trigger its second ability and provide a Cyclonic Rift impression. In the end, cascading into Ugin's Binding means setting off a bomb for later. Besides that, we need to either cast big interaction spells or get creative. There are some tricks we can take advantage of. First off, adventures. With the rules of Cascade, if you cascade onto a spell with an adventure, you first need to check if the main card's mana value is lower than the cascade spell. Then, if it is, you can cast it for free. I know what you might be thinking. No, you cannot cheat adventures with higher mana value than the main card this way. The adventure must have lower mana value as well to be cast. The most important fact for this build though is that I can have low cost interactions on the adventure side, allowing me to keep the lower part of the curve clean. Similarly, split cards are a good tool in this regard. Split cards mana value is the sum of both halves, and that's the value that Cascade will look at. Besides Spring Mind, I run Commit Memory, though mostly for the memory side. I must admit I once lost by accidentally taking myself, so it felt a bit necessary to run one copy of a Time Twister effect. The mana value of Commit Memory is 10, and since the deck doesn't run anything costing 11 or more, there's no way to cascade onto it and cast it with the wrong timing. Channel is another great ability to pack in low cost effects on bigger spells. Colossal Sky Turtle is probably the best example. Moreover, a channel effect cannot be countered by a counterspell. Speaking of that, if you look at the decklist, you may notice pure counterspells are out of the question. I cannot risk cascading onto one with only my own spells as valid targets. Besides adventures, only model counters are allowed, giving me other options beside the counter in case I cascade onto them. Only exception is Transcendent Dragon. With that, if I ever cascade onto it, I can just counter my own spell and recast it, for an extra cascade and a cast trigger. Alright, I did promise some finishers, I ain't disappointing my viewers. Cascade lets me cast lots of extra spells. What's the best way of taking advantage of spellcasting if not Hullbreaker Horror? And you know what's better than having a Hullbreaker Horror on the field? Having 4 Hullbreaker Horrors on the field. I included 3 additional versions of the bounce effect, specifically Tidespot Tyrant, Emerald Tyrant and Brilliantly, the Moonkraken. Why not just clear the way for your creatures by bouncing all your opponent's permanents while you get all your extra cascade value? Together with Scourge of Fleets and Spectral Deluge, these are the main cards you want to aim for to close the game. And if you don't already have a big board from your earlier turns, don't fret, Glacier Godmo is here to grant you creatures haste with its Landfall ability. Fancy some alternative win cons? Here's the other exception to my low mana deck building rule, Etherflux Reservoir. Recall the mental note I asked you to make when talking about Mind's Desire? Etherflux Reservoir works like Pseudostorm, gaining you life when you cast a spell for each you cast before this turn. There is a detail to emphasize. The effect doesn't lock the number of spells cast when it goes on the stack. We can play around with this using Cascade. Imagine you have both Etherflux Reservoir and Imoti on the battlefield, and you cast Treasure Cruise. Both Etherflux Reservoir and Cascade trigger, and since you control both the effects, you can choose the order in which they resolve. You choose to resolve the Cascade first, putting it on the stack on top of the Reservoir. This way, you end up casting Emerald Tyrant. Again, one Reservoir trigger and one Cascade trigger. You do the same as before, ending your Cascade chain with a small spell, say Lone War Elves. You get yet another Reservoir trigger, but now you finally have to resolve those. At this point, each trigger checks how many spells you have cast this turn, and all 3 see you've cast 3 spells, gaining you 9 life instead of 6 with only 3 spells. Now imagine the same chain, but Treasure Cruise is the 7th spell of your turn. A little math, and that makes it 30 life with 3 spells. You'll end up one-shotting all your opponents in no time. Remember when I said I had to add commit memory to the deck to avoid suffering from success and decking myself with my card advantage engines? Yeah, they're cool, but they're not optional. Oh well, how about we turn all that card draw into life loss? This is the first deck in which I included Psychosis Crawler, and it was actually a good finisher. See what I meant by turning value itself into wiggles now? There's not much else to say about my deck, but there's a couple things I want to say if you plan on building Imoti yourself. First off, beware of access spells. Unless you know very well what you are doing, they can be a huge trap here. Yes, their mana value depends on the value of X and it can become huge, but when you cascade onto them, the value of X will always beat 0, more often than not wasting the cascade. As always, play those at your own risk. Secondly, shout out to Monstrous Vortex as a card I would like to include but hasn't found its way in the deck yet. It does seem like an auto-include if the deck is particularly creature heavy. Yes, the mana value does place it in the restricted part of the curve, but I feel confident in saying that this is the least of the problems. Monstrous Vortex can act as a second better Imoti if you run enough creatures with power 5 or greater. I initially skipped this card because I didn't run many of those, but the deck changed since the card came out and the amount of creatures that will trigger it has increased. Hey, Cabby from the future here, and Quandrix the Proof has been spoiled a few days ago, and holy cannoli, that's a good card for this deck. Good stats, Flying Trample, Cascade, Gives Cascade, what can I ask more than this for this deck? I'll test it out and let you know, but I have this little feeling that it's gonna be a good card for the deck. Back to you, Cappy from the past. Well, I sure hope hearing me say Cascade 54 times was worth it in the end. As I mentioned, despite the clear mechanical direction dictated by the commander, Imoti decks are really open-ended. You can pick and choose all your favorite ICO spells. I surely expect some of you to have your own versions, so feel free to share your ideas in the comments if you'd like. Maybe I can snatch something for my next iteration. Can you hear that? That's the sound of me not mentioning Zelix for a whole video. This is an incredible moment. Okay, jokes apart, thank you for watching. Drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and see you next time. Hey, as always, thank you for watching and I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, please subscribe, so the channel can grow. You know, that's how it works. Anyhow, I don't have much to say in this section this time, if not that I got a refurbished iPad with an Apple Pencil, so I'm currently reworking my production pipeline, so you may see some changes in the future, in the near future. Oh well, bye! What? Am I stupid? Yes, but not for this statement. Let me present to you Reign of Gore, a Rakdos enchantment from Dissension. Reign of Gore says, if a spell or ability will cause its controller to gain life, that player loses that much life instead. Pretty straightforward, healing becomes harmful. Got it. You attack with your Healer's Oak, connect and you gain 1 life? How did that happen?